other people could see how hurt I was, and I didn't want anyone to see, to be able to tell that I was hurt, so I just tried to be the opposite, I didn't care about anything, and it worked. People believed that I didn't care.
For my True Light News, I'm continuing on from our cyborg conversation that we had last time. And there were a lot of subcategories that I had skipped over. And there are two that I'll be going over today very delicately because it deals with genetic engineering and biomimicry. I'm going to explain this as I would explain to my own children the best way that they would understand it. So if I lose anybody, feel free to ask a question by raising your hand, or you can just say "hua," or even type it in the chat. That's perfectly fine. Now, with cyborgs, I did explain that a cyborg is a cybernetic organism, or just cyborg, and that is a being with both organic and cybernetic parts. And like I explained before, that's basically everybody in this room and beyond. Whether you have a bionic arm or whether you use a toaster at home, that is in terms dealing as a cyborg. Now, when you want to go into more details of what we see, where we have prosthetic legs, prosthetic hands, and even prosthetic eyes, then we can coin more into those subcategories that I was talking about. But with that, it was one called biomimicry that was on our list that we're going to stop by. I do have a short video about biomimicry, but I'm going to show you some examples of it, or explain to you some examples of biomimicry. So I'll bring that up in just a few moments. Now, this list that I'm going to go over, I'm just going to quickly go over this list. There's another one that I have more in-depth details about, but this will just give you a understanding of what biomimicry is. These are just 9 examples of biomimicry. When you look at this design here, you're thinking prosthetics, you can even say biomechanics, but this is basically a form of using something from nature and turning it into something mechanic. This one right here is, a prosthetic arm, but this prosthetic arm is derived from tiny leaf cells to whale fins. So they looked at the design of a leaf and the design of a whale fin and said, we're going to use that in prosthetic by putting this together so this person can use it. They don't have the information here. That's why I didn't want to use this one, but just to look at it. But what they would do, what I remember reading about, is this would turn, later on, they would have this turn into tentacles where you can actually use them as fingers and pick things up. It's more durable. It's better in most environments. So I think they'll have more of that in there. But this is another one called the gecko climbing feat. So obviously they used a gecko and said, hey, that amphibian, that lizard can basically walk on a surface. So they said, we're going to do that. I'm pretty sure another good example would be, it's a spider, but like Spider-Man, he's walking on buildings and different things like that. So somebody said, hey, I'm going to use that example in nature and I'm going to give it out to the forefront. And this person is going on vertical surfaces without falling off. Another one is the kingfisher. So they took the example of the kingfisher's beak and it became of the model for the Japan's 500 series bullet train. And these trains are very, very fast. They just zoom on by. So they have up to speeds of 200 miles per hour. they don't really have much information on why, but they said the chief engineer was a bird watcher, and he had an idea and said, I'm going to do the shape of this bird's beak to make it more aerodynamic. And in Japan, these trains are very popular and they get you places because a lot of people commute publicly. So that's just another example. We have the baobab tree that inspired tree houses. Some pictures here. And that's the baobab tree. That's how big that tree is. So they said, hey, we're going to use that for housing. This is an armadillo backpack. This is just a backpack that it's just more durable and adaptable. Definitely they want to use more like recycled materials, and it looks like it has a lot of space in there. So that's obviously derived from an armadillo. Then we have a survivor locating spider. So they use these particular machines to, to go into natural catastrophes, incidents, dealing with fire, also just basically to help responders. They've also been known to broadcast live images and track down hazards or leaking gas. So they have just like a little a rover, if you will, but it's a spider. We have the heliotrope that basically follows the sun. This is grafted after a sunflower. If you knew that sunflowers turn towards the sun, or they follow the movement of the sun. So they basically use these solar panels that act like sunflowers, so that can help with the electricity. Then we have a climbing robot, and it mimics inchworms. So this thing just basically inches up. It's used for people that are woodcutters, basically forestry tasks that somebody probably can't climb to that particular length and cut down something. This robot will climb up there for you. This is more fashion, but this is the bird skull the bird skull shoe. So they designed this shoe after the skull of this particular bird. I don't think they have the name of this one. I don't think I got to see it. But this particular bird right here, they use that for the heel of the shoe, and the material for the shoe is also different as well. Then here is the tentacle-inspired prosthetic arm, and that's what we were talking about earlier when we saw on top. And it usually uses it to grip objects with just a curling motion. So that's just a little gist of biomimicry. Biomimicry is just dealing with mechanics, and that takes influence or ideas from nature. Here's another one here. And this was last year, but this was based on a funding or a startup for people that wanted to put together, and also a prize. So these people had 10 weeks to put something together that deals with biomimicry. And the first one is the aquamodite. So basically what they use here is they use diatoms, it's a cell. And what they do is these cells form a cell wall out of silica, and they utilize aquaporins. And aquaporins are proteins that transport that pure water across cell membranes throughout nature. I have a quick little video to see for that one. There's only, from all 10 of these, I have 2 to further explain them, because the other ones I can explain better. But this is basically a filtering system. So what these will do is they'll basically give you high purity grade water. They will desalination on any scale, and it's going to remove industrial pollutants and arsenic, microplastics, and pharmaceutical residues. So that is one, and that was in Sweden. We have the Biome, and that is just bio-based building materials. And they use mycelium, which is the root of mushrooms, and they have a sheet called ORB, organic refuse biocompound, and that's made out of the bio waste and also plant-based binder, or a solutant. So they just have building materials that are made out of this material. They said it's much more sustainable, and it's going to help with the construction industry. They have another one called Grow, and it's not to replace oysters, But what this particular biomimicry does is it helps clean the water and create reefs and create a safe environment for oysters to grow. They state that with oysters, they basically are also this filtering system. And because,
Um, you mentioned, what was the name of that? The mushroom, what was that?
mycelium.
Psyllium?
Mycelium.
Oh, mycelium. Okay,
Mhm.
that's psyllium. Okay, cover it.
No problem, Latakuzi. So yeah, this is mycelium right here. So that's what they use for that particular construction compound. So yeah, they basically will help oyster populations grow with the grow oyster reefs. And that's also to restore coastal ecosystems. If you know that the coral reef is basically dying. And just like we knew years ago, I think most likely basically all my school life, elementary all the way up, rainforest was always basically endangered. And then a little bit later, I would say around middle school and beginning my high school, that's when I was learning that the coral reef was dying out. So they're trying to use biomimicry to help boost that population. Then there's another one, and I have like a little side note or a fun fact on it, but this one is called impossible materials. Now, titanium dioxide, very important to know. It is a colorant in the world. It's used everywhere. You'll see it, like they say here, white traffic stripes painted on roads. It's in your sunscreen, it's in your toothpaste, and yes, it's even on your powdered donuts. Okay, so if you like your donuts, you like them powdered, you got titanium dioxide on it. And I'll explain a little bit more on what they're kind of talking about titanium dioxide and what the FDA is saying. But because of titanium mining has an environmental cost, and the nanoparticles of titanium dioxide has been labeled as a suspected carcinogen. And I'll explain what a carcinogen is as well. So they said, okay, we got to search an alternative. They started studying a bright white Cyphosylus beetle that has found that it has a thin layer of scales on its exoskeleton and it acts as a highly optimized scattering structure. So basically it just gives the beetle its white, bright coloration. So Impossible Materials is trying to mimic the structure with cellulose, which creates a safer and better performing white pigment. So they're trying to find another way to make white pigment without using titanium dioxide because of the environmental costs and these nanoparticles that have been labeled suspected. Another one is infinite cooling. So they start off with their project of saying 40% of all water used in the US is in manufacturing sites and power plants. And much of this water leaves the facilities via high density water vapor from industrial cooling towers. So with this company, they said, we are going to they have developed an add-on process to capture cooling tower plumes by enhancing fog harvesting strategies deployed by animals such as the Namib desert beetle. So they'll close partially the water cycle loop at industrial facilities, and that they say that also helps with millions of dollars and hundreds of millions of gallons of water annually. I will do a video on that one because I just can't explain those tower plumes yet. So that's one. We have muscle polymers, and muscle polymers has developed a high performance non-toxic adhesive known as polystyrene or PCS. And what it does, it mimics adhesive proteins muscles. That basically what muscles do, they adhere to surfaces in extreme marine environments. If you ever look at a naval ship, they have so many barnacles and muscles just stuck to that ship. And people have a hard time getting those things off these ships because of how tough they are and how glued they are to it. So PCS is 300% stronger than any other underwater adhesives and bounds to wide ranges of materials. They want it to be used in a number of industries, and they are bringing their product to market first for coral restoration. So one thing we saw earlier, they were talking about oysters. They're just building things to have a better environment and also help induce oyster population. And now they have another product that's out there to help with coral restoration. We wouldn't have to do all this stuff if we didn't tear up the world, but here we are. Another company has New Iridium. New Iridium has created a suite of organic chemicals that enable photocatalysts or light-driven chemistry. This eliminates the need for heavy metals or heat as catalysts. So this technology dramatically reduces the energy and time required for a wide variety of chemical reactions, lowering costs and giving green chemistry to industry standards. So this is going to help with these pharmaceutical and chemical companies that have these chemical spills. And they said it mimics photosynthesis. So now they're using their biomimicry is plants, photosynthesis by using light energy to convert water and CO2 into chemical energy. The next one is Novo Biome. And Novo Biome is dealing with recyclers. We have your fungi and your microorganisms. They use it in brownfield, Superfund sites, and other contaminated industrial land. So they will select naturally occurring fungi that target specific contaminants like oil and heavy metals, and they perform micromidation on the site. So you don't need to take away soil to a treatment facility. This basically will eat that away. And it's supposed to help with contaminated sites around the world, decomposing those harmful toxins. Then we have the Renaissance fiber. This is a hemp textile fiber. They say it's ancient practice, but it's an advent of modern agriculture and the invention of synthetic textiles. So they basically get some hemp and they use a method on natural degradation of plant fibers observed in tidal streams. So basically they're using hemp and they're using far less energy to produce these textiles. And they said it's more affordable, and have a higher quality than any other fiber types. The next one is the Spintech Engineering. And I'm gonna go ahead and say it, it's a spider. They went and looked in nature and said, I'm gonna use what a spider uses. They say spider silk is often cited as one of the strongest biological materials in the world. So scientists said, hey, we want to find a way to artificially synthesize this silk for humans to use as textile fiber, aka clothes. So they said that they mimicked a spider spinneret's ability to spin fiber at room temperature without the use of harsh chemicals from a liquid gel. Their process is 1,000 times more energy efficient than synthetic petroleum fibers with water as their only byproduct. So that's the 10, and these are just people just starting up and saying, hey, I do have an idea. I want to be part of this $100,000 Ray of Hope Prize program. I don't know who won, though. I didn't get to see all that. But all these people had presented that. Here's the one for the Aquamodate water purification. This is their website. They'll explain how they want to help produce clean water. There's the team. Next we have the Biome. And here they talk about how they want to basically use it for construction and what they use with the mycelium and how they use it. So whenever you get a chance, I will put these websites in the House of Who Telegram if you're interested in kind of learning a little bit more on how they're doing. But this is one of the structures they use. And this is mycelium, basically. Here's the Grow Oyster Reef program. Here they talk about shoreline retention, ecosystem restoration, sustainable aquaculture, carbon capture, reef disc, settlement plates, reef rocks, reef tangles, all that good stuff for the coral reef. And they also explain how they grow this concrete mix. So like again, biomimicry, they're mimicking something. So they've made a formula to match oyster shells. It helps with early stage nutrition. So not only is this laid down to help with the production or the reproduction of oysters, but it also helps with them where they can eat this stuff and help them grow. And they explain what natural ingredients are in there and everything. And they used a 3D printing machine. How easy was that? This is Impossible Materials. And Impossible Materials is basically the replacement of titanium dioxide. And this is the natural color that will come out. It's all plant-based. They also use, they mimic the Cyphoscylus beetle. And this is what they want to use it for: personal care, cosmetics, pet care, food, pharmaceuticals, paints, coatings, printing, construction, and plastics. And as you know, plastics is a really bad material that we have because it's really hard to get rid of. And especially in the ocean, I mean, there's so much garbage in there. Like, plastic is number one. This is the infinite cooling technology. So instead of just nasty black smog, it basically filters it out and makes it more efficient. Energy savings, water savings, reliability, all that. This is the muscle polymers. For this, what they target is dental. So they're going to provide with adhesive solutions for fillings, crowns, caps, implants, orthodontia. Adhesive solutions for mission critical military ships and vehicles, adhesive solutions for propagation and planting safely and effectively for the coral and electronics. So it's adhesive solutions for PCBs, solar panels, and batteries. And this is that bonding material that I was talking about that is mimicking muscles. New Iridium. It deals with our photosynthesis and basically helping produce CH4, also to just stop pollution in the air. And then we have 3 more, but this is the Spintech. I believe 300 million years. So they're just using what spiders have been doing all these years, turning liquid into thread. The Renaissance Fiber, based in the North Carolina, they're doing the hemp-based textiles. And then we have the Noble Biome, where they help with polluted soil thermal treatment. So basically all the land that has been destroyed or polluted by these industries, they're using this product to eat away that instead of having to use more chemicals that are harmful to the environment. This is another form of biomimicry that I wanted to share. It's a very quick video, but it talks about inspired tales.
In this work, we present ARC, an artificial biomimicry-inspired anthropomorphic tail to allow us alter our body momentum for assistive and full-body haptic feedback. In some situations, our bodies may lack the ability to support or balance us when we are climbing high cliff or lifting heavy objects. Several previous work addressed the limitations of our bodies by augmenting our existing upper and lower limbs we accustomed to. However, unlike human body, several vertebrate animals rely on their tail passively for their mobility and balance. Thus, in this work, we aim to expand our innate body functions passively through biomimicry-inspired tail. ARC is designed as a wearable pneumatic tail, with adjustable length and weight to accommodate with the user's body and to provide sufficient force to alter body's momentum. Driven with 4 artificial muscles embedded within the tail, ARC can provide force on 8 directions depending on the actuated muscles. Each of the 4 muscles consists of a bladder that allows the expansion and contraction of its length. The overall structure of the tail itself is inspired from the seahorse tail, which is feasible to design and handle high amount of forces compared to the body size. Thus, we designed it to be both length adjustable by adding or removing vertebrae into the tail, and weight adjustable by adding extra weights into the vertebrae. To provide sufficient force to drive the muscles, we using pneumatic actuator driven by an air compressor. Each muscle can handle up to 0.8 kPa with the current design. Through this tale, we show the ability to passively provide forces to the user's body based on the estimated center of gravity of his posture in order to correct his body balance.
So that's another form of biomimicry. Now for the fun fact that I wanted to share before we go on to the next subject, and that next subject will be genetic engineering. Now, and I will explain a little bit about genetic engineering. Is basically direct manipulation of DNA to alter an organism's characteristics or their phenotype in a particular way. And this is when I get all scientifical and stuff. So again, if you have questions, bear with me and ask me as much as you can. But titanium dioxide, again, this is those dyes, flavorings, active ingredient, and it's odorless. It just has a white color for it. It's in your coffee creamers, it's in your candies, it's in your sunscreen, it's in your toothpaste, and variations of titanium dioxide is used to enhance the whiteness of paint, your plastics, your paper products, and like I said, the foods we eat. Now, they have been questioning because they said, okay, the nanoparticles of titanium dioxide may not be safe for people to use, because when that powder is exposed to someone's lungs and through inhalation, it can be a carcinogenic issue. Now, carcinogenic or carcinogen is dealing with like your cancer. It can harass your cancer very bad. And so they were like, the Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, they said, okay, we are going to put this on a pending, but we do not feel that it could be safe. We're just going to issue warnings. Now, the European Food Safety Authority, or the EFSA, concluded that titanium oxide should not be considered safe as a food additive due to uncertainties about possible inflammation and neurotoxicity. And then the Scientific Committee of Consumer Safety, or the SCCS, they warn against sprayable products and powders that are exposed to, person's lungs through inhalation. So just a little fun fact, in your toothpaste, there's titanium dioxide. You can also try to find alternatives to it, but it's what makes that white color. And again, these are, biomimicry ideas that they're trying to use to replace that titanium dioxide. And before I go on over to our genetic engineering, I wanted to know if anyone had any questions, concerns, comments, or anything that they wanted to add. All right. So with genetic engineering, this is basically tampering with DNA. And I'm going to explain DNA and RNA for those that fell asleep in biology. I kind of did, but here we are. But it's very, very simple. Very, very simple. And I'm going to show you a company that deals with genetic engineering. And it's been on the news 2 times within the same 2 weeks. So the first particular news that I've seen, it was over here talking about CRISPR. And CRISPR, CRISPR, deals with gene editing. And they believe that they have a potential cancer breakthrough, which they use technology to unlock the patient's true tumor fighting potential. Now, CRISPR uses technology that changes only small parts of your genetic code. I'm not sure if anyone knows what genetic code is, but I'm going to give you the most easiest lesson on it. And a genetic code is a code. And it's funny because we say code when it talks about our bodies, and we also say code when it talks about computers. But it basically is a code in our body that uses to convert instructions that are inside of our DNA that are essential to our life. And it's used in codons that's found in mRNA, which mRNA is a messenger that carries information from your DNA to the site of protein synthesis. Okay, basically everything in our cells are basically built on our genetic code. That's our hereditary information. That's our information that's passed down from parent to child, and that is stored in the form of DNA. And then that DNA is then used to build RNA proteins. And that's ultimately what makes your cells, your tissues, and your organs. So like I said, like a binary code, when you're dealing with computers, your genetic code, which uses DNA, has a chemical language, and it only has a few letters to store information in a very proficient manner. So binary with computers only recognize 001100010001. Whatever sequence it is, it's going to be 0100. But your DNA has 4 letters or 4 nucleotides. Okay, adenine, cytosine, guanine, and thymine or uracil or uracil. They're 2 different things. And basically what thymine and uracil does, thymine helps make things more stable when it's used in your DNA. And then uracil is used in your RNA. It has the same properties, but it's more prone to mutate. So in this case, your RNA has new copies that can be produced from your DNA at any time. So those RNA molecules are intentionally destroyed. They don't last long, basically. They have a short lifespan. So they're constantly making more RNA to add to your DNA. Now, again, like I said, you have 4 letters for your codes. And what this company is doing is they're going in there and they're carefully just taking little pieces of your DNA, and basically they will inactivate certain parts of your DNA, or they'll just take it off, just take it away. Now, when I told you about codons, okay, and that's dealing with your messenger RNA, which copies the information in your DNA. So just think of a cell, and it's basically stamping something, which is like your DNA, and then your RNA is right behind it, and it's just copying the same thing over and over again until there's a change, if that makes sense. I don't know. That's why I'm just asking, like, does anybody understand like the difference between an RNA, and there's different types of RNAs, and I'm pretty sure everybody knows DNA at this point. But that's what your genetic code does. It just basically it helps send information, and the RNA and DNA helps with that information to be portrayed, and that's how you get your hereditary and where you get passed down certain features and everything like that. Anybody have a question? I'm sorry, I heard a mic. Okay, so yes, when you're dealing with genetic engineering, it's going to be manipulating your DNA to alter your phenotype. Now, phenotype.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, no, I was wondering. So RNA is like what people pass on, like eye color and stuff like that.
RNA it makes your proteins. It helps. Okay. In this terms, I'm talking about your mRNA. And mRNA is what you have where it helps your genes code to your DNA, and it can read. It basically translates. It's your translator. Does that make sense? So you have your DNA, and then your RNA goes behind it, and it translates, and it helps build these proteins, and it helps build your organs. So it helps give information about your past, which is in your DNA. And you have to also think about how it helps where it can understand, like, okay, in this person's past, they had a disease. So they're going to put that in your code.
Right. So when you look at mRNA, you just got to remember that M for memories and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. For your memory in your DNA. Right. The sequence, you remember the sequence. hereditary sequences, et cetera, that can be passed down to you by copy of your DNA, et cetera. Cool.
Tua. Did that answer your
Oh,
question?
so like they,
Uh-huh.
if I had a disease and I don't have it anymore, they can tell I did have it by like looking at my DNA.
Tua.
It'll basically, you break your leg, you break your ankles, you might find later on in your DNA down your genes and stuff like that. Somebody might be, your knees might pop every time. It might trickle down in that way, in that fashion through your DNA. Cool. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Glasses,
well, yeah, that makes sense.
Glasses and, things like that.
So with CRISPR, CRISPR is short for clustered, regularly interspaced short palindromatic or dromic repeats. I know that sounds like a lot. It's just basically research scientists use it to selectively. That's why I said selectively. They have to literally go in there and say, okay, that's the part of the DNA that remembers this particular disease, and we're going to take that part off. That's what they're doing. They're editing your DNA. CRISPR, people only found out about CRISPR, really a lot of people only found out like a decade ago. And, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it just got me thinking about, lab rats when they was growing ears and stuff like that off of a rat using genetic manipulation. Okay. That's what I was thinking about, things like that with your RNA.
Right. I'll have an article on that too. They have been using mice and lab rats, and they've been trying to make human organs from those test subjects. So there's a rat with a human ear growing out of it to this day as we speak, and they just take it off and they use it.
It's funny, they like to use pigs a lot too. They feel like pig is more relatable with human DNA.
Right.
So, yeah.
And actually, where is it? You just made me get an idea. Right here, they also explain and talk about how certain species are used. So here it is. There are a few slight exceptions to be found with dealing with genetic code, like similar organisms, that when a gene from a plant or jellyfish is injected into a mammal cell, the mammal cell will read the gene in the same way and build the same product as the original plant or jellyfish. So if it has the same DNA sequence, or at least near to perfect, close enough to be, and just like you said, pigs, they feel like pigs are, close enough as far as like human, they will use those. There's another example, I believe, there we're talking about fluorescent cats. They use a gene from a jellyfish to basically have cats in different colors, but it's not just for them to look pretty. It was for them to know like what kind of diseases these particular creatures had. And they just use cats for that around. And I think they use rabbits too. So that's just one way.
Some people think that cloned cats are creepy, but what about a cloned cat that also glows in the dark?
It's an incredible story. Not everybody's happy to hear this, though, that scientists in South Korea cloned a pair of kitties who light up with a fluorescent glow when exposed to ultraviolet light. Glow kitties.
All right, now the question is, what was all this for? Apparently there's a good reason for it. Christy Lustout has the story.
At first glance, these cats look like any normal cat, but there are two big things which make them very different. One, the cats are clones. Two, they glow in the dark. You heard right. When they're put underneath ultraviolet light, they glow a dull red. And it's no accident. Scientists manipulated the donor cat's genetic code, then passed those changes onto the clones.
외부 유전자를 도입한
It's meaningful as we introduce outside genes to transgenic cloned cats for the first time, and as they have the red fluorescent protein gene in their organs, they give off a red color.
Here's how they did it. Scientists took skin cells from a Turkish Angora female cat and used a virus to insert the genetic instructions for making red fluorescent protein. Then they put the gene-altered nuclei into eggs for cloning. After that, they implanted the eggs back into the donor cat, which effectively became the surrogate mother. Now, these glow-in-the-dark cats shine a light on what may be possible down the road. Scientists say if you can pass along coding for fluorescent markers through cloning, you could eventually pass along more complex genetic coding. That means cats could help develop treatments for diseases, for animals, and for humans. After all, researchers say there are some 250 diseases which affect cats and humans. In theory, leaving a warm, healthy, fuzzy glow for many more than just their 9 lives.
But I'm going to do a video on CRISPR first to kind of explain it a little bit more. Now I'm going to explain the video too. This guy right here, he is known, and he's a CRISPR scientist. He was known to have his own twin daughters before they were birthed. And he basically went in and changed their DNA so they would be, they won't be prone to HIV. And so he got in trouble, and I believe he's doing 10 years in jail now. So I will mute and we can watch this really quick to give you a little understanding of what CRISPR is. And one of the infamous articles I read about them, and there's 2 more. One is another infamous one, and there's another one that's been around for a long time dealing with sickle cell disease.
Chinese researcher He Jiankui claimed to have made the world's first genetically edited babies. He altered the DNA of twin girls to try to make them resistant to infections with the HIV and AIDS virus, despite this practice being illegal and many scientists being against it in the first place. Scientists now have a tool that could alter you before you are born. It's called CRISPR. Clustered regularly interspaced short palindromic repeats. Sorry, did we lose you there? We have the facts. Your body is amazing. It's constantly fighting off illnesses, mutating, and rebuilding itself. And CRISPR takes advantage of all of that. So when viruses are killed off, your body collects and stores remnants of the virus's DNA. Your body uses the virus's DNA to quickly identify, then eliminate the virus if it returns. So now, scientists discovered that if you have a trait for a disease, they can tell CRISPR to cut out those sequences from your DNA. Here's how it works. Cas9, or CRISPR-associated protein 9, is an enzyme that acts like a pair of itty-bitty scissors that can cut 2 strands of DNA at a specific location. Typically, our body uses Cas9 to identify and destroy invaders, but scientists can create guide RNA to show Cas9 exactly where to cut in a DNA sequence. The cell then tries to repair the DNA, but scientists alter the DNA to include their changes, and the gene editing is done. Pretty exciting, right? But what can scientists use CRISPR for? They can use it for curing disease, genetic mutations, stopping bad inherited genes like Huntington's and Tay-Sachs, saving endangered and extinct species, and creating healthier food from meat to vegetables, to name a few. The dark side of CRISPR uses are unknown mutations, super diseases and viruses, increased risk of cancer, and biological attacks, not to mention the ethical arguments over designer babies. Because of this, gene editing is illegal in most places in the world, including China. And even then, Jiankui went along with the procedure. Jiankui said he's altered embryos for 7 couples in fertility treatments, but only one had pregnancy results, twin girls.
There will be someone somewhere who's doing this. If it's not me, it's someone else.
Mainstream researchers and the bulk of the scientific community have called his science project irresponsible and denounced it as human experimentation. Scientists opt for going slow until this genome editing is deemed completely safe. And some consider that any genome editing could have unintended consequences for future generations. Despite all the preemptive worry, scientists feel confident that by the time that you head to the doctor for some gene editing to wipe away your ailments, they'll have it all ironed out. Well, let's hope so.
So I will be going into the Millennium Scroll. It is part 1 and part 2. I have a couple pages that I wanted to read from there. I'm going to go over these two articles about CRISPR and what they have done. On November 4th of this year, a New York man had died while being treated with experimental CRISPR gene editing technology. So he was a sole volunteer in a trial to test experimental and controversial gene editing therapy. His name was Terry Hogan, and he's from Motore Falls, New York. And he enrolled in the study in late August, and he was trying to treat his Duchenne muscular dystrophy, or DMD. He was 27 years old, and he was one of the first Americans to be treated with CRISPR. There are others, and I will be going over one of them. And again, that works with you're editing your genes by precisely cutting DNA and letting the natural repair process take over. So his rare genetic muscle wasting disease is caused by a mutation in the gene needed to make a protein called dystrophin. Again, they do not know how this man died, but they said his death raises questions about gene editing therapies. And it has raised a lot of people to be like, I don't know, but I really want to cure this incurable disease. So they said they weren't clear if he received treatment and whether CRISPR or other aspects of the study or the disease itself contributed to his death. Again, they still don't know. Deaths are not unheard of in clinical trials, test experimental treatments, and it can involve many sick people. So this was, again, on November 4th that this happened, and they were talking about it. They said that DMD is a genetic disorder. If you want to learn more about his disease, 20,000 boys each year, and it occurs in 1 to 3,500 to 5,000 newborns worldwide, and is caused by mutation on the X chromosome that creates problems making the protein dystrophin, and that helps build your muscle cells and keep them in track. So he had a muscular disease that was wearing him down. And then they're going to talk about how CRISPR works on this program. They also talk about the Chinese scientist that in 2019 that he was jailed for modifying the DNA of twins to make them more resilient to HIV. And a lot of people were, calling him ugly names. But this is one of the things where they were like, that's unethical, that's human trials. We don't deal with that. But again, over time, they do have human studies. There was one, it doesn't deal with genetic mutation, but it deals with people's personality and emotions. I believe it was the Stark prison trial where they had, they basically took a whole bunch of people and they arrested them and they put them in a prison environment. And then they got some people that they put in the newspaper ads and they put it around like colleges and stuff. And they got like, I think they got $15 a day. And they would pretend to be guards. And they were sitting there, watching how people would interact if one person was in power and other people weren't in power and everything. It's a really good study to, take your time and take a look at it.
On the first day, I said, this is not going to work. I mean, the guards felt awkward giving orders, and they'd say, okay, line up, repeat your numbers, and the prisoners started giggling.
Hey, I don't want anybody laughing. 3, 2, 1.
And then a very interesting thing happened. Dave Eshelman, who the prisoners named John Wayne, like he's a Wild West cowboy, he begins to be more extreme.
I decided that I would become the worst, most intimidating, cruel prison guard that I could possibly be.
I'll see in the future that you do work when you're told. Say it again. Say bless you, correctional officer.
I was sort of fascinated myself that people were believing the act, and I was trying to see how far I could take it before somebody would say, okay, that's enough, stop.
We did have to do things like push-ups. We would have to sing things. At the beginning, we protested some of the actions. We did things to irritate the guards.
So the guards' authority was challenged right off the bat. And the guards had to decide how they were going to handle that, and they had to decide it without our input. I mean, again, this was not a Milgram study in which we were standing over them telling them what to do. And they began to see the prisoners' behavior as a kind of an affront to their authority. And they began to push back.
We would ramp up the general harassment, just sort of crank it up a bit. Nobody was telling me I shouldn't be doing this. The professor is the authority here. You know, he's the prison warden. He's not stopping me.
This is unbelievable. They took our clothes. Hands off the door.
There was the first evening a kind of rebellion that took place.
The prisoners rebelled. They barricaded themselves in their cells and said, we refuse to come out. They took off their numbers. They didn't want to be de-individuated. They started cursing the guards to their face. And the key turning point was the guards began to think of them as dangerous prisoners.
But these are just one of the many. I mean, we can talk about the Pennsylvania experiment or the Philadelphia experiment, but that's just, again, one of many. And that's only just paying attention to people's emotions and their personalities and what would they do in situations. So that's a New York man that died. And again, that's the infamous article that they wrote lately. But there's another one that I thought was interesting. And this was the first sickle cell patient treated with CRISPR gene editing. It's a woman in Mississippi, and she has been thriving for 2 years after getting treated for sickle cell disease. And her name is Victoria Gray. I believe this is like a 4 minute, so I'm just gonna go over. But basically, she went in, and I believe they still have her followed for 15 years to make sure it's working and keeping her safe. And she was just saying, I didn't have any problems at all. Right after I took it, you know.
Sounds like X-Men to me. You know what's real? You know, it seems like only when it becomes when it goes public, when they bring it out into the light, then it seems like, oh, everybody want to act like, oh, yeah, it's, you know, it's human trial. You can't do it. They've been working on this for a long time. Mm-hmm. And as you can tell, they're trying to mess with, you know, copy genetic sequence and, you know, to try to build up superhumans, etc. Their eyes is on military. Their eyes is on workers that can go into environments, you know, that we can't at this point. Basically, you're going to have the little mutants. This is like an X-Men project to me.
Feels like an X-Men project to me. Definitely splicing and dealing with people's genes.
Absolutely.
With her, again, she said she had 2 years that she wasn't in the hospital. She said
they basically took the sickle cell. You know, when you start dealing with sickle cell, to me, when they start tampering DNA with sickle cell, I start thinking black genes, because sickle cell basically, you know, is dominant in us, in Nubian Africans and stuff like that.
Right.
So, and also I think they're trying to go all the way down. When you start dealing with RNA, genetic, you know, all of that, methylations and memory with your codons. I really start thinking about, they're really trying to figure out, they're just going all the way down to the main source or the main technology, you know, which is what I would say, for lack of a better word, God's technology, and that's your melanin. Trying to figure out how that works. Trying to go down to the point where they can actually produce their own type of melanin. They're going through all types of species, animals, as you can tell what she read, finding out different ways to try to get that noob or that melanin, that gold again.
Right. Ooh. I'm gonna try to share this screen with the Millennium book, and I'm gonna be going over pages, if you have it, pages 139 to 23.
Can I say one more thing? You notice that it's not just physical. Like you know, what you read, sister, is like, it's not physical, just like physical changes. Like you said, they doing it with emotions. Trying to tap into emotions. That means hormones, you know, your glands, and your glands is, you know, this etheric, or the counterpart is your chakras, if you consider your chakras in your body. So they try to tap into whatever, you know, trying to take it to another level.
Exactly. Wow. Yep, that's exactly right. They, you know, they over here play, you know, they look like they're just grazing the top of an iceberg, and we're like, oh, you guys are done yet? And they're like, we got a lot to go. We're not even done. But at the end of the day, they still got another team underneath that big giant iceberg that's hidden underneath, and they have been going in, getting more information than we know now. Here's the Millennium Scroll, I believe. Okay, yes, we're gonna start on 223. And this is gonna start with an eye surgery. And this was an article taken from the Boston Herald newspaper on Tuesday, June 8, 1999 AD. And it was entitled, Innovative Eye Surgery Brings Vision to the Future by Michael Lasanandra on page 3. And it states, Saratoga has suffered from an allergic condition, atopic keratoconjunctivitis, that had scarred her cornea and damaged cells that helped the cornea do its job. She couldn't even see the E at the top of the eye chart. She had a conventional corneal transplant to her left eye in New York 6 years ago, but it only lasted for about 6 months. She's a paralegal who needs to be able to read legal documents to work, found her way to Dr. Foster, an ophthalmologist at the Massachusetts Eye and Ear Infirmary. He told her about a new operation, a corneal epithelial stem cell transplant that could possibly restore her sight. She had the transplant with stem cells taken from her daughter's eye to her left eye in July. Her sight in the eye is now 20/40. She said to me, it was a godsend. Amazing isn't the word for it. One day you can't see, and a couple of days later, you are reading. It's fantastic. Right now, the sight in her right eye is still hanging in there. But if it goes, she said she will have another stem cell transplant. Here's another article that was taken from the Macon Telegraph on Monday, August 2nd in 1999 AD on page 11A by the Associated Press entitled, Need Eye Surgery? Head to the Mall. And it states, in Fairfax, Virginia, squeamish shoppers beware. They're slicing eyeballs at the Fair Oaks Mall. No, or they're not filming a schlock horror movie. It's just business as usual at the Visual Freedom Center, believed to be the first eye surgery center to open in the shopping mall. Passerbys can watch the surgeries intended to correct nearsightedness and farsightedness live on a television screen. The operation, which reshapes the cornea so that images properly hit the retina. This is basically your LASIK or keratomyelitis. The center of a nearsighted person's cornea is pulsed with a laser to reduce the curvature. In a farsighted person, the periphery of the cornea is pulsed to remove tissue and add curvature. We also go to another article from the Washington Times on August 2nd, 1999 AD, and it was issued entitled British Supergerm is created for defense. Genetically modified organisms tested by Joe Murphy. On pages A1 and A10, and it states, Britain's Ministry of Defense has disclosed that it is creating lethal genetically modified organisms, or GM, and a secret program to prepare defenses against a new era of germ warfare. Tests of the potential of GM supergerms are being conducted at Portion Down, the headquarters of the government's chemical and biological defense establishment. The research uses similar genetic engineering techniques to those that create GM foods sold in supermarkets. It was launched to study the implications should such technology be developed for weapons of mass destruction by enemy power. The government has kept the experimental research secret, but the London Sunday Telegraph has learned it has been going on for at least 5 years. And we're just going to add an extra 10, 50 years, because they usually do this in advance. The theoretical threat posed by GM germs has alarmed the Ministry of Defense, and genetic techniques can make biological weapons more dangerous to humans and less easy to detect or counter. It is already feasible to use genetic engineering to introduce a lethal toxin into a pathogen, which is an organism that attacks humans, to increase its killing potential. Organisms can also be modified to resist antidotes. In the future, it may be possible to wipe out an army with mutant germs that would then be made benign by genetic flaw.
Yeah, they're doing it now. They're doing it now. To me, when I look at monkeypox, they're doing it right now. When I look at COVID, that's their way of doing it as well. You know, yeah, that scroll right there is pretty old for it to be, you know, talking about things to date that's happening. So they've been doing it for a while, y'all, for real. So they're way more advanced than what you're thinking. Anytime somebody scream about, well, genetic cloning is not good in the news and all that, it's a bunch of BS. They're doing it, and it's legal. Companies that are broke usually get caught out there and be made public and you know, be humiliated. And the ones that are more sophisticated doing it, you know, and working in accordance with everything are the ones that they keep hidden from you. Mm-hmm. They test it in front of you to everybody. They test it on humans. You'll see it in the Olympics. You'll see it in sports and stuff like that. When you be shocked when somebody beats somebody, if y'all know what I'm talking about, that ain't supposed to be able to beat them. And normally you'll see that. Like I'll go as far as saying what I think happened with Deontay Wilder and that other guy, or with Jake Paul. They doing genetic, you know, manipulation and then throwing it in the ring, test it on others, etc. They're also doing it with police force. They're doing it with, you know, your people that help aid people, like the fire department, etc. People. So not the ones in your neighborhood now, but you know, this is their future plans, and etc. Blah blah blah.
That's correct. There was I don't know if I have the article, but there was a test in New York.
Chances are, if you rode the subway this morning, you had no idea it was there. But in the air, in select subway stations, there was a harmless, odorless gas seeping through the air. The NYPD released it on purpose so they could study it. The police commissioner today said there was no danger. In fact, it's intended to fight future danger.
About 40% of terrorist plots throughout the world are focused on the transportation system. We have had, I believe, 5 of the 16 plots against our city were directed at the subways. So it is an obvious target. We have to be vigilant. We have to be aware of that. And this is one of the many things that we do to protect the system.
The gas released today is supposed to mimic what would happen in the event of a real bioterror attack and a real harmful gas was released in the subway. Researchers installed these air sampler boxes near subway entrances in Columbus Circle, another one in Times Square. Inside the boxes are tubes that collect air samples, and that will tell researchers how the air flows.
They want to see how the airflow in New York City behaves. Where does air from one area go to? So if something is released, does it go uptown, downtown? Does it go into the subway? Does what's in the subway come to the surface? All that interaction between surface and subway is important for emergency response.
The gas was released for a total of 30 minutes this morning, and the people who breathed it in had mixed reactions about it.
As long as the gas they're using isn't, damaging people's health.
They say it might be safe now, but who's to know that 10 years from now, we all walking around sick because they put this stuff in the air.
This gas is totally harmless. It's actually used to inflate babies' lungs.
But it was one of those human trials, but it's a public human trial that they have done without people's consent. They would just use like, hey, at this time, just don't go ride in these rides or take the bus or take the subway if you don't want to get sprayed with this non-lethal gas, if you will. So I will find that. Where were we? Benign by a genetic flaw, enabling an enemy force to invade in safely. An enemy may be more than ready to deploy such controllable GM weapons than existing organisms such as anthrax. Ultimately, it may be possible to develop an ethnic destruction germ, that is, an organism that would attack the genes of a particular race.
Whoa, let's go. I think we got that already. It's called drugs. It's called drugs. Now, let me stop. Crazy ass niggas. But but you're right.
Well, there you go.
They're trying to wipe out specific ethnicity. That's interesting.
In January, a study by the British Medical Association warned that a plague or toxin designed to kill specific racial groups can only or could be only 5 to 10 years away. This article was written when? August 2nd, 1999. Okay. Britain has signed treaties prohibiting the creation of biological weapons for military purposes. And the sole reason for the research at Portion Down is to develop protection measures against any threat posed to the population or to servicemen. A Ministry of Defense spokesman said, to perform this task, our scientists have to be at the cutting edge of biological scientific knowledge, including the techniques of genetics. And that's when I go and look at CRISPR that's able to cut and actually locate certain DNA and RNA and say, hey, that right there is the disease, we're gonna cut it out. Now we understand how it looks with that particular disease. What can go on even further?
Yeah, like you have to remember the master teacher said death itself is a disease that, they found cure for, for a long time ago. Death itself, so, is a disease of the body, which is interesting.
Right.
That's another thing they're trying to do is find, a way to prolong lives. You know what I mean? Prolong lives or whatever have you, or even make you younger through genetic manipulation, etc.
Right.
I think I saw something where it was a government official, somebody, ex-government official of some sort, was talking about that pills that actually makes people within their 30s, back men. He said, I'm gonna try to find it and post it.
Isn't it that guy that worked underground?
I'm pretty sure he did. Not Phil Schneider. No.
Okay.
This is somebody old. This is somebody older than Phil, but I think he's still alive. But he was talking about pills that basically it takes 3 months or so. I'll find the link, but they take pills. He said with men it's different from women. With men, it'll make them as young. You get a reboot from the age 21 to 25. Literally, you could be 60 years old and you take it 6 months later. He's talking about visually, physically, everything. The only thing different is your mind. The only thing that's the same is that you're you. You're you, your mind, your brain, your memory is everything good. And this particular pill that they give to special people, certain people with the upper echelons. You know what I mean? You might say the Illuminati, people might say, those type of very important people. And it said in females, it goes as low as 18. Their age go all the way down to 18. They could be Queen Elizabeth type of age. Bing bong. And
wow, that's deep.
You feel me? And I'll post that so y'all can have that. They are up to stuff. No good.
So can I? Who are everyone?
Who are
you doing?
So they are actually doing this now. Actually, with the upper echelon. That's what you're saying.
Oh yeah, they definitely doing that. They definitely are doing that. What's more important is important is your knowledge, your information, and stuff like that. So somebody with that much information or that type of knowledge,
right?
They wanna store that. You know what I mean? You look at them, so they want to store that, they want to save that. That's why they rather, take your conscious and actually put it in computers, etc. They don't really care about the soul like that,
Right.
Yeah, they're doing this. They literally doing this. Of course, they're doing it for their soldiers. They're doing it. Like I said, you want to be able to have. They got people able to go underwater now longer, like unhuman amount of
right. Yeah.
You thinking that it's like a person training for years and stuff like that. Nah, they doing genetic experiments as well. You know what I mean? And splicing genes. And if you look at some of the scrolls, you understand how that works when they do those type of cloning and adding genes, mixing genes. And that they're definitely dealing with like your daughter cells, taking the genes out of the DNA, out of a specific cell and leaving the shell of the cell. And that is called a daughter cell. It's ready to for anything else. You can take another gene from something else and actually place it inside of that. And if that cell is still alive and, and it takes, that become a mutated gene. You know what I mean? They do that with plants. They do, you might have like an apple mixed with a pear. And I'm just using that for the lighthearted people.
Cotton candy grapes.
Yeah, they
did that.
Flavored grapes and stuff like that. But that means that on a biological level, these things, when you start thinking about it, those are living things, living cells in the plants that they're doing it with. You don't think they can't do that with certain type of diseases and also with humans.
Right, absolutely.
If you go to Disney World, for instance, down there in the Haunted Mansion, you see the hologram, right? Or you know how to make a hologram. Well, our scientists have learned how to make people. They call them synthetics. Are you familiar with those?
Well, actually, we just interviewed John Lear, and he was talking about being in an audience in which they were given a lecture by a guy that they thought was real and found out later he was a hologram.
Well, it's a synthetic. The synthetics, when you touch their skin, it feels like plastic almost. That's the latest technique. The old techniques, if you guys can rent a video, the boys from Brazil, rent it, because in it gives you the exact way how our government's been making people.
Really?
Yeah,
well,
and the Soviets have a different method called...
making people meaning temporary people?
No, walking, talking ones.
Meaning through genetics? You're not talking about that?
Well, let me tell you. The movie shows it, but I'll share it with you right now.
All right.
All I need to do is take 2 cells off of your body, yours.
Uh-huh.
We give them a small electrical charge. I'm just I'll act like a fertilized egg. If I got a fertilized egg, all I need is a receiver in order to make it. So they were hypnotizing women, said they were being invaded by aliens. And the fetus starts growing, right? Needs food. Well, they can use cows and sheep, too. Again, a food source, that's all we need. After about 14 weeks, all of a sudden that fetus is gone because they've learned to that's when the fetus starts developing its own blood supply. Then they've used the pituitary hormone extract that they have, which accelerates the being that grows. And the original technology was given to our government by the Greys. Now, the reason was that our scientists were all excited because we could have spare parts. If you need a heart or a liver or anything, you won't have any rejection. It's your own DNA, right?
Okay, because theoretically, if we have overpopulation, we don't need more people, right?
But the so-called elite are selecting on who they want to have around anyway, so if we want to keep people going as long as we can. I talked to the doctor that was working on regeneration of Castro, for instance.
Right.
On the DNA sequencing. And they're just learning about this.
Well, my understanding is that a lot of presidents have already been replaced.
That's right.
Yeah,
I don't think...
They're walking around, they look old, but they basically, some of the people are just
I'll just give you something I'll give you something to ponder. Get some old videos of George Bush, when he first came into office. Look at the person and listen to him speak. Look at his actions and listen to everything that's there. Now, it's a lot easier to put somebody out in front to act as even Bush did. He had somebody else that was up there acting like he is and look like it. Even Hitler had he had his stand. In fact, his stand-in was the one that they found in the ground over in Germany. I mean, Hitler and Eva and the dog and 14 other people got aboard a plane and flew down to Barcelona, Spain. You were aware of that. And then ended up in Antarctica or in Swabenland and then died a few years ago in Brazil.
That's what we heard.
I have all the documents from our own government.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a contact, one of our
Stalin
contacts.
Stalin asked for they tried to burn the body and he got the body back and he said, wait a minute, different ears and the testicles were different and everything else, so they knew it wasn't Hitler.
But is it a clone or not?
Oh, now we're going about cloning. Cloning techniques, since 1938, they've been making clone people. There's 8 countries making clones. I have a doctor friend that all it does is treat the clones.
Where do you get your information?
I get it from some of the people that are willing to come forth, and they talk to me because they hope I'll put the information out because they always got 2 people following them and they may be killed. If I start talking about cloning too much, the people that get involved into that you disappear on it. So I don't go into too many more details, but there is information that's available, and more and more of that's coming on the line. I just told you, go rent the movie.
Okay, Boys from Brazil.
Yeah, and you'll see the whole technique on what they show it to you in different places, so you can imagine what it's going on.
Okay, so
now let's go to the next step, because this is the most important part.
All right.
If your physical reality that you have, based on this physical life that you have, this dream, is made up of the experiences that is impregnated on your body and in your mind, consciously, right? Your soul memory is another thing. It goes back whatever time that you elected to be in this incarnation for whatever reason. Now let's show you the division on these things. Since the body's very physical, and we just got you making a physical being in a few months for spare parts, they said, now we've got the perfect deal. How can we have that work better? Well, if you go to the hospital today and get an encephalogram, what's that? That's the memory of your conscious mind. It's on the CD. Let's download it on this being. Now we got a walking, talking duplicate that has the total memory that you have, because we just took it off of your own mind.
Okay, it's like Blade Runner, the android.
Exactly. The only thing is that it's like this DVD recorder. Sometimes you have glitches in it, so you have to have them tuned up occasionally or redone. And so we take them to Camp David, or there's a wing at Bethesda Hospital, to just tell you. If you go down there and check, you'll find the nurses, if they're willing to come forth, they'll tell you they work on those people, and they call them the others. I thought it was interesting. They're people. Remember, these people can think and act, but they don't have soul. That's also prophesized.
Right, that's true. That's true.
Now we have another agenda that's going on, so you have to be careful of all this. There are many extraterrestrials that would like to be in on the game right now, so they can sometimes will come into these physical beings that we make to manipulate them.
I see.
So now you have a combination effort that you have to look at, and discernment. You have to discern what the game is. Well, just figure that most of the leaders we have in the world have been bought and paid for or created to think a certain way in the world.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Lunch Break. I'm Tanya Rivero. In a striking scientific breakthrough, U.S. researchers have cloned 2 older people, one aged 35, the other 75, into early-stage embryos. This comes after the first early-stage human clones were created last year, but by using cells from infants. Here to discuss this fascinating step forward is Gautam Naik, who joins us from London. Hi, Gautam. Thanks for being with us.
My pleasure.
So this is a big leap in the science of cloning because of the ages of the cells used, correct?
That's right. An experiment was done a year ago, which got a lot of publicity, in which scientists showed that they were able to create early-stage human embryonic clones for the very first time. Of course, researchers have cloned sheep and rabbits and dogs and whatnot, but they've never cloned a human, at least into an early-stage embryo form before. This experiment repeats that technique and shows it can work as well, but with a little twist. They took their DNA material from older people. One was a 35-year-old male, the other was 75 years old. People of that age tend to have obviously more mature cells, and the idea of creating an embryonic clone of that person based on these older cells is quite remarkable, but these researchers have pulled it off.
Is it much harder then to do that? Is it much harder to clone older human cells?
Absolutely. They've been around for much longer. They've been exposed to all kinds of environmental damage and problems, and to be able to get them to go back to an embryonic-like stage is quite remarkable. So it is clearly a step forward. The longer-term goal is not to clone people or anything like that. There's a medical need to create fresh tissue and to transplant it into patients who need it. So if you had a heart attack and you've got scarring in your heart, one way to repair that scarring is to put fresh tissue. Well, if you took tissue from anyone else, you'd have an immune reaction, and that's a big problem. But if you can create a clone of yourself in a little lab dish, we're talking about maybe 50 or 100 cells, a little clump, and from that you converted the cells to heart tissue and put it back into you, well, it's your own DNA returning to your own body, so there'd be no immune rejection, and that is the ultimate medical goal, and this research takes it a little step forward.
Very, very exciting. Obviously, like you said, huge implications for treating age-related diseases. How long do you think it will be before we can start to see some of these cures?
Oh, years to go, because this is a very tricky technology. There are huge safety issues do remember that, when it came to creating Dolly the sheep or cloning almost any other animal that's been cloned, you need hundreds of eggs, if not thousands. A lot of fetuses that are born are malformed. You can't do that kind of thing with human experiments because you've got to make sure that the embryonic clones you create and that the tissue you derive from them are really, really safe when you transplant it back into a person. So we've got a long way to go still.
All right, Gautam Knight, thank you so much for telling us about this exciting news.
And animals themselves, dogs and stuff like that. Because we usually allow them to do that and get away with it with our pets and animals. Oh, that's dope. I got a blue, colors of their hair and eyes, and some of them that glows in the dark and things like that. It's all interesting. Everybody overlooking the fact that, wait, they're messing with DNAs and they know how to do this now. They can do that with humans as well. Children, talking about people getting missing and stuff like that.
Messing around and fooling around with your DNA so you can basically be ready. So some that aren't able to withstand what they're doing, they're like, okay, that one has failed. This one is strong enough to continue on. We're going to do more testing so we can get to the goal that we want. Pua. But when I was looking up that word, actually, they were saying some things that particular substance may play a role in schizophrenia and mental illnesses. And I thought that was interesting about it. But there are mentions of it. When you look online, they're going to give you a lot of QAnon, Anonymous and stuff like that, and Pizzagate and everything like that, or what they want to say, conspiracy theories. But they do have like books. There's one I was just looking up right now. It's a 1954 book called The Doors of Perception, and it's by Aldous Huxley. And he mentioned the discovery and the alleged effects of adrenochrome. And it talks about symptoms of intoxication, although he never consumed it. And then Anthony Burgess, he mentions that in the beginning of a 1962 novel, which is a movie as well, called The Clockwork Orange. They said the protagonist and his friends are drinking a drug-laced milk in that movie.
Yeah, I found out about it through Dave Chappelle years and years ago. He talked about it. He was like, these celebrities that you're looking at, this is what they're taking about. This is my first time hearing about it. And they say they try to downplay it and all this other stuff, but basically he stated it was an oxidized form of adrenaline. That's how you're able to see like the celebrities, even like the older one. He even mentioned Queen Elizabeth. He talked about her. He talked about Beyonce. He talked about Michelle, Barack, all of them. They used it. So yeah, that was my first time hearing about it, and I started doing a little more research, and there was more videos that came out about it. And then unbeknownst, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with him, Pimp C, the one that died. He talked about it. Like, I think it was like 2 months before his departure from us. He talked about it.
Controversial new treatment that may hold promise, but at a price.
It does appear to reverse the aging process.
Dr. Jesse Karmazin is talking about transfusions with the young blood from teenagers, and he says it just may turn back the hands of time. That blood is going to patients over 35 as part of a clinical trial called Ambrosia, where subjects paid $8,000 to get the rich growth factors found in the platelets in blood's plasma.
There's pretty much people from most states, people from overseas, from Europe and Australia.
There have not been any published results, but the intriguing concept still found its way into pop culture.
He's my transfusion associate.
Dr. Karmazin says patients who have had it say they feel amazing, and he has seen evidence of reversing the aging process in rats.
Their brains are younger, hearts, their hair, if it was gray, just turns dark again.
There has also been encouraging Alzheimer's research using young blood at Stanford.
We found that it was safe and feasible to administer infusions of young plasma weekly.
Dr. Sharon Shaw is a researcher who says they have seen evidence of improvement in functional ability.
It's all very exciting that there can be components in blood that could be healing.
Platelet-rich plasma, or PRP treatments, using a patient's own blood, have been in demand as trendy vampire facials to fight wrinkles and as joint and tissue treatments to accelerate healing.
A lot of goodies in blood.
Dr. Houman Khorazani is using those rich PRPs in in a study at Mount Sinai to regrow hair.
We can actually use your own blood to stimulate the body.
The study is ongoing, but seeing short-term results, Dr. Khorasani is optimistic.
It looks very positive.
Experts agree there is still more research that needs to be done.
There's still a lot of unknowns and a lot of factors that we don't know when we're actually getting another person's growth factors and nutrient injected in us.
Dr. Karmazin says that he plans to open a young blood lab in New York in the coming months.
So this is
it's deep.
This is interesting because I watched the Netflix series The Watcher. I hated it. It made my blood boil. But I did not notice that they mentioned that because they were talking about the neighbors drinking children's blood for that. A lot of these celebrities are literally saying this out loud. Like lately, they're literally saying this, and their fan base is so. And I have an article about obsession, actually. I can do that from the next round. But people are so obsessed with celebrities that they don't understand that all that glitters is not gold. And they don't realize that all of this is just like we always talk about, it's a mask. It's a character that somebody designed so they can get on top and be that. And it's really hard for a lot of these celebrities to be themselves because they're pushed in a lot of directions. They're handled in a lot of directions to be something that they are not. There was a woman named Kathy O'Brien, and I believe she's on YouTube, and she was is kind of close to the Montauk Project and the Montauk Boys. If you're familiar with that, that does tie into the Philadelphia experiment in a sense. But Kathy O'Brien was a MK Ultra. And I'm not going to try to go too deep in this. And also on this page, as you can see here, it talks about cloning. I'm not touching on the subject of cloning, even though it is genetic manipulation. But we're just going to lightly touch cloning because that can go into a whole nother avenue. But Kathy O'Brien, if you get a chance to look her up, she has a lot of explaining where she was with like the Clintons, with Elizabeth, and there was also another video of two children, and they were talking about how they have a lot of military backgrounds with these families. So they'll find somebody and have them pair with a wife or a husband, and then they will raise these children in ways where, you know, they basically use them for whatever they want to use them for. But Kathy O'Brien was an MK Ultra that was designed to hold information. She was also a sex kitten or a doll, however they want to describe it now. But she would sit there and listen to different presidents talk about different things. And she would have to hold this information like she was a computer. So then when she's done doing what she has to do with these presidents and all other people, she had to go to another place and convey that information. So I haven't watched her in a long time. I think she's still alive, but again, her name is Kathy O'Brien, and she does talk about how they would watch a lot of these children get eaten and how they would get eaten and just all the horrible things that they have to go through.
When I was really little, as far back as I can remember, I was sexually abused. And the sexual abuse went into child pornography. But as a little child, it was so natural to me to be in a sexual mode all the time that reaching out when I saw someone aroused was just a normal thing for me to do. My sexuality was never suppressed. I was never told that's wrong. I was never, it was encouraged. So I just grew up thinking that was the norm.
With the abuse that I went through, it was as though my spirit was removed from it, like it took flight. It was a safe place, one that was actually in flow while my body was being directed by other people, and ended up, being involved in things I had no way I would have participated in. When they played Most Dangerous Game. I was stripped of my clothing. I was allowed to wear tennis shoes and told that I could have a head start and begin running. before I would be hunted down. My exposure to it resulted in my believing I had no place to run and no place to hide. It seemed there were no limits to what could happen in my existence at that time. It was the most extreme, one of the most extreme situations I think I ever survived.
Greetings and salutations. Mark Phillips and Kathy O'Brien have been through a lot. Kathy has had some extraordinary experiences in the mind control program, and Mark came along and pulled her out of this situation. So without further ado, if you will please give a warm round of applause to Mark Phillips and Kathy O'Brien.
When I was a really young child growing up in Muskegon, Michigan, this would be the early 60s. I was born in 1957. My father had been sexually abusing me as far back as I can remember. And he often bragged of substituting his penis for my mother's nipple while I was an infant. So my sexuality was heightened from a very, very early age. And I also developed what is known as dissociative identity disorder. It was formerly termed multiple personality disorder, but has since been redefined because it's not multiple personalities, but the shattering of a personality and a compartmentalization of memory, of trauma, too horrible to comprehend. Childhood sexual abuse is certainly too horrible to comprehend. There was no place for that in my mind. This compartmentalization of memory was what the government was interested in, because they figured that if a person couldn't think to bring to mind abuse, they wouldn't be able to think to bring to mind government secrets, government perversions, or anything else they wanted compartmentalized in the brain. My experience as a mind control slave on a White House Pentagon level was extreme. I was totally robotic. I had no capacity to think for myself. I didn't have any free thought whatsoever. I didn't even have the ability to question, to reason, or consciously comprehend what I was involved in.
And dealing with reptilians, what I remember reading is they like to scare you. They have to scare you because they want to get that adrenochrome, that endorphin, that thing. They crave that. Mm-hmm.
That's the epinephrine from your, from your adrenal gland.
Adrenal gland. Mm-hmm.
Right. That's basically what your adrenochrome is. What they're using it. And that particular thing, it helps basically generate cells and stuff like that. It prepares you when you go into your fight or flight, act, when your pituitary gland secretes it into your adrenal gland, with your adrenaline, it's basically your body testosterone. And what that does is it sends out cells that's able to regenerate real fast, for that particular moment. In case you got to fall, you're running from some type of, it comes from your old, before you, when you was evolving as animals and stuff like that, from water onto land, etc. And where you was, if you had to fight or flight, where you had to run, you might have to jump without getting hurt, in that adrenaline, you know what I mean? That make people jump over the fence when they know, that
extra boost, that second wind. Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's that particular thing that they're using to, basically, I guess, to boost up genes. They're trying to tap into that in order to manipulate it and make people younger, more athletic.
I would like to say a good example is Hocus Pocus, even though it's a cult classic. Everybody loves that movie in a sense. But those witches over there sucking dry those children, they definitely go towards children because they produce it a lot more. But yeah, I had that thought and I was like, man, I watched that movie growing up and I just, I thought it was a kooky movie, but these people really just devouring children in front of our faces. Here we are. But yes, so that's the answer for that one. And we can try to go a little bit deeper into it, but that's just the tip of the iceberg, if you will. And we're going to be wrapping up here in a few, so I can leave room for questions, or anybody else wants to share any ideas or information that they wanted to talk about. Will be done in a few moments. And this part of page 224, according to the Newsweek magazine in December 28, 1998 AD, and also continuing on to January 4th, 1999 AD, an article entitled Into the Gene Pool by Sharon Beagley states, and I quote, "Science. Recent advances in genetic research are changing the way we view ourselves, our place in society, and the nature of life itself. Genetics is not just a science, let alone a technology or a business. Genetics is a profound idea. It is an idea that poses disturbing questions and yields disturbing implications. How can we think other than genetically? When genetics proves its power, even in omniscience or omniscience, again and again. And not too long ago, they are now trying to do birth transplants where they take the womb out of you, or they'll have like a artificial womb to grow babies. And we're gonna go into babies in a moment. But I believe there was a video online where they showed a baby inside the amniotic sac out the mother's stomach. And, you know, they gave birth that way. So they're starting to do that. And that goes into people that
back to the laboratory at Shempty. That sounds like Shempty right there, y'all. Y'all know what that is.
Yeah. Oh.
Introducing Ectolife, the world's first artificial womb facility, powered entirely by renewable energy. Ectolife allows infertile couple to conceive a baby and become the true biological parents of their own offspring. It's a perfect solution for women who had their uterus surgically removed due to cancer or other complications. With Ectolife, premature births and C-sections will be a thing of the past. Ectolife is designed to help countries that are suffering from severe population decline, including Japan, Bulgaria, South Korea, and many others. The facility features 75 highly equipped labs. Each state-of-the-art lab can accommodate up to 400 growth pods or artificial wombs. Every pod is designed to replicate the exact conditions that exist inside the mother's uterus. A single building can incubate up to 30,000 lab-grown babies per year. Ectolife allows your baby to develop in an infection-free environment. The pods are made of materials that prevent germs from sticking to their surfaces. Every growth pod features sensors that can monitor your baby's vital signs, including heartbeat, temperature, blood pressure, breathing rate, and oxygen saturation. The artificial intelligence-based system also monitors the physical features of your baby and reports any potential genetic abnormalities. The pods are equipped with a screen that displays real-time data on the developmental progress of your baby. These data are sent directly to your phone so you can track your baby's health from the comfort of your zone. The app also provides you with a high-resolution live view of your baby's development. A special section in the app allows you to watch a time-lapse of your baby's growth and share it directly with your loved ones. Because babies can recognize language and learn new words while still in the womb, Ectolife growth pods feature internal speakers that play a wide range of words and music to your baby. Through the app, you can choose the playlist that your baby listens to. You can also directly sing to your baby and make them familiar with your voice before birth. Our goal is to provide you with an intelligent offspring that truly reflects your smart choices. Ectolife improves your bonding experience with your baby. Thanks to a 360 degrees camera that's fitted inside your baby's growth pod, you can use your virtual reality headset to explore what it's like to be in your baby's place. See what they see and hear what they hear. Using a wireless haptic suit connected to your baby's growth pod, you will be able to sense their kicks in the womb and share this experience with your friends and family members. With Ectolife, your baby will receive the best nutrients that can support their growth. Each group of pods is connected to 2 central bioreactors. The first bioreactor contains nutrients and oxygen, which are supplied to your baby through an artificial umbilical cord. This bioreactor also contains a liquid solution that serves as the amniotic fluid that surrounds babies in the mother's uterus. It's rich of vital hormones, growth factors, and antibodies that sustain your baby's growth and development. Thanks to a system controlled by artificial intelligence, each baby receives custom nutrients tailored to their needs. The second bioreactor is designed to eliminate any waste products produced by the babies. The artificial umbilical cord helps the babies to release their waste products into the second bioreactor. With the help of a delicate layer of engineered enzymes, the second bioreactor can then recycle waste products and turn them back into useful nutrients. This way, the facility ensures a steady and sustainable supply of fresh nutrients to your baby. With Ectolife, miscarriage and low sperm count are a thing of the past. Prior to placing the fertilized embryo of your baby inside the growth pod, in vitro fertilization is used to create and select the most viable and genetically superior embryo, giving your baby a chance to develop without any biological hurdles. And if you want your baby to stand out and have a brighter future, our Elite package offers you the opportunity to genetically engineer the embryo before implanting it into the artificial womb. Thanks to CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing tool, you can edit any trait of your baby through a wide range of over 300 genes. By genetically engineering a set of genes, the Elite package allows you to customize your baby's eye color, hair color, skin tone, physical strength, height, and level of intelligence. It also allows you to fix any inherited genetic diseases that are part of your family history so that your baby and their offspring will live a healthy, comfortable life free of genetic diseases. Say goodbye to the pain of childbirth and birth-related muscle contractions. Ectolife provides you a safe, pain-free alternative that helps you deliver your baby without stress. The delivery process is smooth, convenient, and can be done with just a push of a button. After discharging the amniotic fluid from the artificial womb, you will be able to easily remove your baby from the growth pod. Everything is perfectly designed so you and your partner can enjoy the delivery process. To ensure full transparency, our post-delivery free DNA paternity test helps you confirm the genetic identity of your baby so you can return home knowing that your baby is genetically yours. You don't have to worry about power cuts or carbon footprint. Ectolife uses highly efficient, clean, renewable energy consisting of solar and wind power. The highly advanced pods operate with minimal energy needs, making it easy for your baby to make it to full term without any complications. And for those who want a more convenient solution, Ectolife is made accessible so your life can be easier. Thanks to our miniaturized bioreactors and long-lasting batteries, you can use Ectolife growth pods at the comfort of your home, allowing you to incubate your baby in your building without the need to visit our factory. By owning your special growth pod, you will have the ability to build a happy family, one baby at a time, away from any birth complications. The concept of Ectolife facility was designed by biotechnologist and science communicator Hashim Al-Ghaili. It relies on groundbreaking research work that has been conducted by scientists and engineers since 1950s. Tired of waiting for a response from an adoption agency? Unable to find a suitable surrogate mother? Worried about pregnancy complications? Worry no more, because Ectolife got you covered. Ectolife, reinventing evolution.
Page 225 is an article that talks about gene therapy, and it was taken from the New York Times newspaper, Science Times, on page F1 on the year of 1999, June 29th, on a Tuesday. This issue was entitled "At Gene Therapy's Frontier, the Amish Build a Clinic" by Denise Grady. And she states, "The Amish and Mennonites may travel by horse and buggy and forego most modern conveniences. But there is one bit of progress that they are eager to embrace: gene therapy. If it all goes as planned, conference participants learned 3 children from the communities will become the first human beings to test a new method of gene therapy. If it works, it will spare them the devastating effects of a rare but deadly inherited disease, and the condition Crigler-Najjar syndrome, a substance, bilirubin, a waste product from the destruction of worn-out red blood cells that builds up in the body. Bilirubin is produced constantly in the human body, and normally it is broken down by an enzyme in the liver and then secreted through the intestines. But in people with the syndrome, the enzyme is either absent or scarce. So bilirubin accumulates, causing jaundice, a yellowing of the skin and the whites of the eyes. And more important, it is toxic to the nervous system, and the children live in constant danger of brain damage. And the only way they can survive is to spend 10 to 12 hours a day under special lights that break it down. But as they reach their teens, the light therapy becomes less effective unless they can get a liver transplant. They may suffer brain damage or die. If gene therapy works, the children will have a chance to lead a more normal life. But previous attempts at gene therapy for other diseases have been disapproving or disappointing. If the new approach, called chimeroplasty, succeeds against Crigler-Najjar syndrome, it would finally open the door to treatment of a host of other, more common genetic disorders, according to Dr. Michael Blees, a gene therapy expert who left the National Institutes of Health in January to join a Philadelphia company specializing in the new therapy. The other disorders that might be treated include sickle cell anemia, cystic fibrosis, and a failure of the immune system known as ADA deficiency. When you read the experts of the following article, remember these people have their own agenda, and their agenda does not include you. You can take heed and prepare yourself for the real picture that I've been painting in your mind's eye all these years. I've been writing books, or you can continue being deceived by the words and the images of the beast. Taken from the November 2nd, 1998 AD edition of Newsweek magazine entitled Tomorrow's Child by Jerry Adler with Pat Wingert, Karen Spriggan, Elizabeth Angel, and Michael Mayer. They feel that a kid's life in the 21st century will have amazing medical advances, great economic opportunities, earlier schooling, and many new kinds of Barbie dolls. Children born in the year 2000 will live on average twice as long as those born in 1900s. The Millennium baby will be born into a nation of approximately 275 million, the third largest in the world and still growing. The mid-range estimate of the Census Bureau is that the population will reach 323 million by 2020 and 394 million by mid-century. I do want to ask if anybody can actually look up the Census Bureau population today, because it's now 2022, and they said by 2020 we'll be at 323 million. Doctors will be able to do anything on a fetus that can be done after birth, and about 2003, researchers will be able to identify the genes responsible for many of mankind's most intractable afflictions, such as cystic fibrosis, muscular dystrophy. Ooh, we just talked about that today. Congenital immune deficiency, But by the early years of the next century, doctors will perform the equivalent of alchemy, curing diseases by directly tinkering with the patient's what? DNA. Okay. They will synthesize normal copies of the defective genes or altered genes that counteract it and attach them to a vector, such as a benign virus, to carry them into the patient's cells. The next millennium is going to be great for kids. It's the adults who will miss the 1990s. Meanwhile, there will be others choosing and paying for sperm bank babies. Here is an advertisement from the Weekly World News on September 29th, 1998 AD, and it reads, "Get a $5 baby at the world's most bizarre sperm bank, or pay $15,000 for a little genius." Americana, Brazil, the world's most unusual sperm bank, charges $5 to $15,000 to make women pregnant, depending on whether they want the father to be an artist, a genius, a muscle man, or the director of the sperm bank himself. "They will go to bed with me. They get a cheap baby," said Sergio Gomez. "If you want a genius or an artist, the price is higher. In those cases, the baby is conceived by artificial insemination. I'm the only prospective father who actually has sex with the women, and that's why I practically give my business away for free." Pua.
All right, I did look up your what do you call that? Your consensus for the United States population at this point. Right now, it says one birth every 9 seconds. So there's being babies born every 9 seconds. There's more, look, one death every 11 seconds. This is what's happening right now. The population within the United States at this point, the whole planet is 8 billion, I'm sorry, around something, but 332,838,183 in population in the United States and growing and dying. You got 11 people dying per second. That's crazy.
That's crazy.
And not 11 people dying. Every one person dying every 11 seconds. And there's more babies being born. I guess that's why they're trying to reduce population. Hurry up, get them out of there.
Get them out of there. This following article is taken from Saturday, March 27th, 1999 AD, the issue of the New York Times newspaper entitled "A Birth Spurs Debate on Using Sperm After Death." And it states, Los Angeles, March 26th, in the first known birth of its kind in the United States, a California woman has given birth to a girl using sperm retrieval from her dead husband, raising ethical questions over whether a man must give his consent to be a father. The sperm was retrieved 30 hours after the man's death and then frozen for 15 months before use. His wife, Gabby Vernoff, became pregnant in July 1998 and delivered the girl on March 17th in a Los Angeles hospital. One medical ethics expert contends that the procedure is an issue of reproductive freedom that society has no right to prevent. Another argues that the procedure should not become a standard medical service. Is it appropriate to consciously bring a child into the world with a dead father? Said Alexander M. Caprone, professor of law and medicine and the co-director of the Pacific Center for Health Policy and Ethics at the University of Southern California. What medical services should be available for assuaging, addressing, comforting the grief of losing a spouse? Would we want at that moment that a death occurs to have doctors asking, do we harvest eggs? Do we harvest sperm? This is not for the betterment of the human condition. Ms. Vernoff's husband, Bruce, was in his early 30s when he suddenly died of an allergic reaction. He and his wife had no children, but after his death, his wife asked that his sperm be retrieved and preserved, said Dr. Cappy Rothman, director of the Center for Reproductive Medicine at Century City Hospital. Dr. Rothman led a team that went to the coroner's office and extracted sperm from Mr. Vernoff's epididymis. The long, coiled tubes behind each testes were sperm produced and the testicles mature. Doesn't this remind you of the Osset, Isis, and Osiris story earlier in the book, The Immaculate Conception? I was going to end it with a quick article about what's happening today, and that will give us room. This was on our website here. Okay. The baby and DNA testers. In Minnesota, there was a baby about 1 month old. Her name was Isabel. And one day, the pediatricians told her that she has a gene, that she has cystic fibrosis, or she carried a gene. And so they said, oh, we just did further testing and she doesn't have the disease. And the couple was like, well, how do you know? She was just born yesterday. They never agreed to genetic testing. But what we don't know is that newborn babies in the United States are routinely screened for genetic diseases. Since the testing is mandated by the government, it's often done without the parent's consent, and that's according to Brad Thurrow, who's the director of the National Newborn Screening and Genetics Resource Center. So if you've ever seen or been in the hospital where your baby or someone else's baby gets pricked on the heel, that is them testing the blood. In many states, like in Florida, where Isabel was born, baby's DNA are stored, and many parents don't realize the baby's DNA is being stored in a government lab, and they usually have to find out. In Texas and Minnesota, parents have filed lawsuits. Samples are kept so tests can be repeated, and if DNA is ever needed to help patients identify a missing or past child, and also used for medical research. The DNA is also given to outside researchers. They started doing genetic testing for newborns in the 1960s, where they were sitting there testing for disease and conditions. And if it's undetected, they were like, okay, it could kill the child, so we have to test this. But over the years, other tests were added to that list. And now most states do mandate that newborns be tested for anywhere. And the DNA samples are stored in state labs from 3 months and up, depending on your state. They don't stay in the state labs all the time, and they're often given to outside researchers, like I said, and sometimes even with their baby's name. So your baby is not anonymous at this point. 20 scientific papers have been published in the United States using 2,000 newborn blood samples. And researchers do not have to have parental consent to obtain samples as long as the baby's name is not attached. If a researcher wants a sample with the baby's name attached, consent first must be obtained by the parents. The health insurance that paid for Isabel's genetic screening now has a record of her positive test for cystic fibrosis genes. And they said, alongside with Minnesota and Texas, the states are required to destroy the baby's DNA sample if a parent asks. So if you're in the hospital, you know somebody's in the hospital, and they feel like somebody took their baby's blood, just go ahead and call them and say, hey, did you take my baby's DNA? And they will have to destroy it, but I don't know if you'll be able to see them destroy it, but they have to destroy it. But if you want it to be destroyed, they're not going to tell you. They're going to say it's destroyed, and they're just going to keep it. Exactly.
Right. They're not going to tell you. That's when they insert the chip in them too. And well, we could say this one for another subject, but they are also switching your babies too.
Oh yeah, they love doing that.
Yeah, they're switching your baby. They're taking the original baby that's coming out the mother's womb and giving you the clone. But that's another subject that we could talk about. I'll find more information about it.
Perfect. Yes, when I go into cloning, definitely can talk about that. And thank you for that information.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm done with this report. I will have more information, but just to end it off, they are arguing that the blood samples from the newborns that have information should be made available to scientists and not necessary with the consent of the child's parents. So please, 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 if you know someone who's pregnant, have them ask. I'm not sure about the state of Georgia or any other states that we are all connected at this point, but they will take it and put it into an outside lab, not even your same state lab. And that's just a little upside of how they're over here messing with DNA, getting DNA. A lot of people don't realize that we have a biofootprint where people spit everywhere. You spit out your gum, you leave around a lot of DNA, hair follicles, skin. And I believe there was a woman that was literally following people around and grabbing these things that they were dropping. Like, I don't know how people dropping hair in the middle of the street, but they are somehow, some way. But people literally spitting or spit a gum out, and she will collect it and say, hey, this is somebody's DNA right here, and I can do something with it.
Only when we enter Daly's room do we see the advancement of these primitive technologies. The device used to recreate people from a DNA sample operates in a similar mechanical manner to that of how a DVD or Blu-ray player willingly accepts the media that's inserted inside it and acts to provide us with the entertainment stored on the disc. Although it's more akin to ripping a CD onto a computer,
as you can interact with the files in countless ways.
Further entertainment than just listening to the piece.
This is further supported when Nanette is being essentially ripped from the DNA sample and the word assimilating appears on the screen. If we use the biological definition of the word, it's clear that Daly's obsession grows beyond just merely having a collection, but that her absorption into the machine will make him better in some way. Also seen in his room are model brains locked behind glass, reflecting his obsession with collecting, torturing and tormenting minds, just so he can get through the social torture of the office he works in.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to be mindful and careful.
That's the hospital. As soon as you go up in there, they're like, look at that vein right there. Get him.
Yeah. And you're not even in there for them. They're just like, we just want to test it.
Yeah.
That vein right there looks juicy. Get him.
Yeah. Oh, cut it out, man. I'm having my girl in December, man. My first girl, man. Cut it out.
Congratulations.
You will definitely say, always be around. Mm-hmm. Follow them. Don't let the hospital bully you around. If you want to follow your baby to that nursery, you follow your baby and you look through that window in the nursery at all times, because they do crazy things. They always sneaking in the room and you're trying to sleep and you're like, why are you Dracula right now? I don't want you.
Right. I got two other boys out here. I always, I get to the point that I be becoming the bad guy. Like, yo, why you doing all of that? No. I'm doing it because I know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I'll stand right there. They can't move you from there. I'll stand right there and stare at my baby until, you know what I mean? Make sure they don't grab nothing.
No, sir.
I was just saying that I'm concluding today's True Light News. But if anybody has anything they want to say, you can go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and mute my mic. And Tawahat, it was wonderful being able to express that to you. I'm not a biomechanics scientist or a biology major, but I hope that my information on DNA and RNA and with the help of Mibu explain a little bit more. It's very important to know this because these cells are in your body. These are things that make your body move, and a lot of people don't like to pay attention to that. And if you can understand, if you can sit here and read information about how your car works, then you can sit here and understand how your body works, because that's what keeps you moving. That's what keeps you going. You got to understand what your liver does. You got to understand what your kidney does and why they're important. Pancreas, all that, and what makes them tick and what makes them get healthy. And a lot of people like to oversee that or ignore that and be like, well, I'm just going to eat a salad and then that's going to make everything happy with a glass of water. No, it's not. It's a lot more to that. And definitely when we're working here in the House of Who and getting ourselves together, whether we're meditating, whether we're learning our breathing techniques, and even just reading the scrolls and just eating that knowledge, not just for knowing this knowledge, it's not just for that to feel like you're superior. This is stuff in here that's important where you have to read over at least 3 times to be like, okay, now I understand. Now I get it. It was hidden there the whole time. It was literally right under my nose with this information, and I just ignored it because I wanted to read what I felt that I wanted to read, or I wanted to selectively see what I felt that I wanted to see. And once you start understanding how you work as a person, it's just going to get so much better.
So, anybody got anything they want to add on or want to build, share with the family before we close out?
I remember me and Sukar ended up found a video about this guy named Dr. Finkelstein, I think his name was. And the video was how do 1 million children taste, about the missing people and the missing children and going in the slaughterhouse, and then they throwing it and mixing it in with the food at McDonald's and all of that stuff. But Dr. Finkelstein, how does 1,000 children taste? It's something similar to along those lines. You might still pull that up and check on that. But he was a Jewish rabbi that was telling everything. It's like, nah, we don't work. We You know, everybody else, all the other cultures want to come to us and want to work. We put them to work. You know, that's how they say. Don't want to be like a rich Jew kid and all that stuff. But yeah, he was telling the whole business about how they running everything.
They're coming right out on television, in the newspapers, on the radio, and you're telling the people exactly what you're going to do before you do it, and they're like they're brain dead. Well, we did a good job with the public school system. We got you to put all of your children in there. You notice that the Jew doesn't put his children in there. They go to the Hebrew Academy where we teach them the real things, and then they go to the synagogue and they learn the real important things. But we send your kids to the public school. We even have you tax yourself from your property so that you never own your property. And so if you don't make your property tax, we're going to take your property. You can bet on that. And we have you put your kid in a 12-year babysitting is about all it does, because you don't learn anything. And then by that time, the kids, they get to be teenagers, and then we give them the music. Not that we really want to call it music, because, oy vey, that's not music. But they listen to that, and then they want to do what they want to do, and so we sell them drugs, and we make a lot of money off your children. Your children from cradle to grave. All we do is make money off of them. Your cattle, your goyim, the human cattle.
Who I recently they really admitted on the news that they using human compost, to grow the potatoes.
Yep.
For the French fries at McDonald's.
Oh,
that's
crazy. Best fertilizer is
right under people's nose.
That's the best fertilizer, apparently.
Boy, I heard that Beyonce over in California was eating human meat.
Oh, that makes me bring up a situation. There is actually a restaurant that sells human meat, and there was an episode on a foreign talk show, and people they actually ate real human meat on live television, and they were explaining how it tasted.
Heb je geroken, Dennis? Je vlees?
Ik heb niet geroken. Moet ik mijn eigen vlees ruiken?
Toch?
Je gaat nu je eigen bil ruiken. Ja, wat bizar. Gewoon rauw vlees.
Ja, dat ruikt niet.
Dat is het natuurlijk ook, maar... Ja, oké.
Mijn go heb je nog steeds.
Wie gaat er als eerste in de pan?
Nou, ik doe eerst Valerio. In het kleine pannetje.
Dit is de biefstuk.
Kijk, hij is best wel heet het pannetje nu.
Oh, daar ga je!
Het voelt toch wel een beetje gek, hoor. En een stukje vet.
Het is net een stuk banaan. Wat heel klein stukje biefstuk nog.
Heel klein stukje zit er nog in, zie je dat? Dus het moet echt wel bien cuit, dus in de schakjofond draai naar voren. Zie je, dat is toch een beetje dat bacon effect, denk ik. Hier.
Jezus, je ligt in de pan.
Ja, ik prik al een stukje van jouw bilvet op mijn vork en het valt me meteen op dat het echt overeenkomt met een autoband. Dus ik ben benieuwd hoe dat smaakt.
Dank je. We bewaren de biefstuk voor het laatst, hè?
Ja?
Alsjeblieft, ik doe dit nooit meer. Ruik eerst even goed aan me. Voordat je het in je mond stopt en opeet, geniet ervan. Het is puur uit liefde.
It's human donor meat, so... You eat animals?
Yeah, man.
You eat pigs?
Yeah, I love fish.
Human meat's basically the same, bro.
Okay, who is this? Who am I eating?
This was actually, this was Bob.
Oh, Bob the Builder.
So basically we've got a new brand called HuMeat. Human donor meat, consenting humans, much more ethical than murdering animals, much better for the environment. We're going to see if the public would eat, consenting humans, seeing as they're usually happy to eat non-consenting animals who are murdered against their will. These humans have been euthanized with permission, to donate their bodies in order to help animals in the environment. So let's see what people think. Hey guys, do you want a pamphlet?
So is this actually human made?
They're from human donors in Europe, mostly. Sorry?
So this is cannibalism?
Well, yeah, I mean, so basically, some concerned citizens feel that, like, if their bodies are just going to be put in the ground, why not use them? I mean, people eat non-human animals. It's not much difference between eating a human animal. The only real difference is that it's more ethical to eat someone who consents you to eat them than the animals that you eat. They don't consent. So that, like, when you think about if you're eating animals, they didn't choose to be killed, but these people did. So it's much more ethical.
Does it taste like chicken?
No, it's got like some people say pork, some people say it's been processed for human consumption though. So
yeah, they said it was tasting better than any other meat. It's crazy. Over in California, they doing some.
They got him up in New York. It says human flesh. I just pulled it up. Human flesh served in NYC's restaurant.
Wow. But,
yeah.
I mean, like, yeah, but it's been like small articles, man. Like they trying to normalize cannibalism
in plain
like,
sight,
you know.
right?
Yeah,
Like in plain sight, you know what I mean? That's what I be thinking, because, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. And it's just like, you know, like eventually these people are going to like reveal themselves in public, and it's not even going to be even like they hide it in plain sight no more. But, you know, like, yeah, it was this American Horror Story. They reveal so much in that TV show, like as far as like occult stuff. Like American Horror Story reveals like a whole lot of stuff. And it was like this one season. It was 2022. It was like one of the newest seasons. Like where like the celebrities had to, like, you know, they had to participate in cannibalism in order to like to move up the scale. You know what I mean? It was this pill that did something to their DNA.
Terry got hit on the head and ass by an addiction stick, the likes of which you've never seen. After the big crash, a lot of folks out of work with nothing to do but get hungry and high. Heroin at first, then crystal meth, then the opioids, which made the heroin obsolete. But people still needed that crystal rush. And cooking meth is easy out here if you have the right ingredients, so don't blow yourself up. Anyway, this one person, no one really knows who they are, by the way, starts experimenting with different recipes.
So it was created by accident?
Well, that's the story. But you want to know the best part? It only works if you have talent. So, those things you see haunting around town, they took the pill, but they're just hacks, wannabes, dreamers. See, if you take the pill and you don't have a creative seed in your brain already, the pill destroys you, turns you into a flesh phantom, always thirsty, never satisfied, or employed. And who knows where talent comes from? No one.
But now I'm draining packages of raw steak to drink the juices and sucking the blood out of my wife's finger. Why?
Metaphorically, I don't know. Maybe something about artists stealing other people's lifeblood to inspire our work. Scientifically, the drug severely depletes the 4 major minerals in our blood. See, Harry, you can't survive on the pill without replacing those minerals in heroic doses. And cartons of cow meat ain't gonna cut it, champ. You're gonna need that fresh, warm stuff from something that has opposable thumbs.
Fuck that, I'm not doing that.
You're absolutely right, yo, because Cat Williams spoke on it. You know, a lot of various comedians speaks on it. You know? Yeah.
It's not really a secret. People know about it. They just, you know, they don't want to. I mean, I wouldn't want to confront it either. You know, let the police deal with it. But, you know, the police, you know, I mean, they bosses are a part of it, most likely. You know,
they're gonna bring the knife and fork. They're gonna bring.
Right, exactly.
They're gonna bring the hot sauce.
Exactly. They coming to Thanksgiving.
The hot sauce.
That red hot.
That real.
Red
That
Bull.
Texas Pete
One of those
expeditiously.
with the Worcester sauce.
This gonna be the last thing I want to say. You know what I mean? One of the first times I ever like really like, you know, because I always read about the Draco, right? You know what I mean, and all of that. But like Jeepers Creepers was just a pitch sign to me, right? When I first read, like when I first started reading Pop's books, right, and I first started to learn about adrenochrome, I saw Jeepers Creepers, right? Basically, how he smells fear, and he needs to make you afraid before he even like eats you. It doesn't work unless you're scared. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Plus, he's a reptile with wings. You know what I mean? He smells fear. You know what I mean? So like, that's a Draco in there. You know what I mean? He's feeding, and guess what? If you've seen Jeepers Creepers 2, you know what I mean? Those are kids in that school bus. You know what I mean? And he has to make them scared before he like he consumes them. You know what I mean? So like, you know what I mean? That's like, you know, and it just, you know,
that he was eating for body parts. Because every time he fell apart, if he needed an eyeball, he had to get an eyeball from somebody. He didn't really eat the whole person. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the science is to feed off your fear. I mean, that's even with the It character, whatever they call it. Pennywise does the same thing.
Right.
To feed off your fear, etc. But, you know, if you really bring it back to reality outside of movies and get it, you know, into this matrix right here, you realize that that's exactly what they're doing day in and day out, showing you death tolls, all the warnings on the news and all the violence and everything, you know, all around you all the time to keep you on high alert, afraid, looking over your shoulders, tapping into your phones, got you always in that state where you are constantly secreting this type of adrenal within your body. This does something to hide the God aspect of you, the right or the real you. It does something to keep that suppressed, you know, and the ego coming away and make you assume that that's your God part of you, that I'm conscious, I'm woke part of you, you know, but it's really just your limbic and your animalistic aspect that is basically hiding the true nature within you. They know about it, you know, and this is why they spend a lot of time making sure that you, unbeknown to yourself, are constantly just dropping those doses of adrenochrome in your body from your adrenal gland, etc. You know, all the time. It has an effect on your DNA. It keeps the animal aspect, reptilian nature, always alive and always thriving, and keeping the godly aspect within you. I use godly because it's, you know, that's the term that we got to use at this point. But your true nature suppressed. Your true nature is the part of nature that has the memory of all of your ancestors and their experience. And their experience come down through you as hunches that tells you what to do, because there's nothing new under the sun. You follow that? So these things hide your higher senses, and then they tell you the illusion that you have to gain your higher senses to give you that illusion that you don't have it naturally. So in all aspects, this is why we have to spend our time, you know, working on self. Our religion is our body first, to get your mind right, get your blood clean, get your melanin detox, get your body and mind detox, so that you can start working on the spiritual aspect, or, you know, the internal emotional aspect. These things cause your emotions to constantly come out off of impulses. You know what I mean? You get mad when you try, you know you're about to get upset. You just still get upset. You know what I mean? God damn, why he got to do, you know, you know you put something right in front of you and you bump your toes and you still get upset because, you know, that the other aspect in you is weakened. You spend a lot of time acting in like animals, meaning that, you know, it's the first thing you do. A lot of people pull up to fast food restaurant to grab meat. That's the main part of the food they want. If a store is just served bread and burger, and there ain't nobody going to that store. So at the end of the day, they constantly want to trigger the animal aspect, the beastly aspect. That's the one, the mankind, or kind of man, not the real you. And all of this energy, all of that money that they put in is just so that limbic system constantly, and now they're doing it externally, of course, but constantly blocking that gene, especially within this sun cycle. And you melanated beings are the ones that have the filter at all times. You know, a lot of people have the tendency of saying or read a little bit or see a little post and say that they have knowledge of it. You know what I mean? But that's just peripheral knowledge. To have an understanding is actually to know what's going on so that it can trigger something within you. The DNA explosion, oh, this is real. This is not just something for information so I can look good or sound good on TikTok. Right. Yes, a lot of children nowadays are learning because of the inflammation that's out there on the web, and they got more access. Back in the day, it was darker. You know what I mean? And people was doing whatever they was doing back then. But at the same time, the distraction is real, more efficient as well. So no matter how much information or knowledge they might think that they're obtaining, it doesn't click within them because of their lack of understanding of what they're actually reading. They're not slowing down. The energy is so high that nobody feel like slowing down to actually study, to actually read, to actually, analyze exactly what's going on so it can click within them that, like you, it clicks in you because, you were raised a certain way. But other people have more distraction. They might know about it. Yeah, DNA cloning. Yeah, I heard that in, X-Men. Whatever. I heard this scientist talk about it on TikTok or anything like that. But it still doesn't resonate with them where, they don't realize that, the best way to hide something, what they're doing is to put it right in front of your face. So you won't be actually focused on that too much. You put it right under your nose, what they're doing to you slowly. Well, actually fast, you know what I mean? But just the fact of saying that I know because I saw it on this and that is not knowing. It's just, you're aware of it, but the understanding it is a whole different animal. And that takes you being interested in wanting to know and being real about what you want to learn so you can be able to explain it to your peers, people your age and all of that. Mm-hmm. But okay, the time is at 10, so we usually end it right now. It's been 2 hours. Anybody else want to add anything or want to share with the family before we shut down for this shadow hour? And tell hi to everybody for joining this shadow hour as well. Cool. All right, Neb, you ready to close us out?
Cool by Zoom, chapter that. Mandana, that map, I should be in the fuck. And I should call the work, I should call you. Nah, the full of I look you very good, she call the work, I look at the very good to me. I look you wahid, Kaka, work, I look at the wahid. I and you come out very good, she call the work, so come up very good. I kilo are when you predict look at you. Come out, I will come back a father, Kalumbi, Amy, the ticker. I look you Kaba Howard, Kalu, Kalu Yaku, Kaiki, Kalu Bob, Kabi. In all prayers, think this indeed the truth, divine love and all. I am in the love of all and all of his people. We are all involved. I am a part of all and all is a part of me. I am one with all and all is with me. I can succeed as a part of all and build as an individual. I can be all I wish and all is known to my wishes to stay alone. I am never alone. All is I. All is I. All is I.
Don't think who? No feel shy.
Shy. Madu.